In between the two phases of the Bengal Assembly elections, we have in our midst Pratik Sinha, the co-founder of Alt News. Welcome to Kolkata and the Telegraph Online, Pratik.
Thanks.
So the first phase of election is over here. Elections have already been held in Assam, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Puducherry. One thing which is your area of expertise, is there a way of quantifying how much of misinformation has been spread, say about Bengal, since this is a very high voltage election as it is called?
There is no way of quantifying, and I don't even think we need to indulge in that exercise. It is, at least from my point of view, it is a known fact that misinformation has become the most common part of everyday political narrative. uh, to the point that level of truth in the society has changed. If 10 years ago, when someone would utter the phrase love jihad, then love jihad was still a conspiracy theory then. Today, love jihad, there are multiple states who have created laws around love jihad. It has been made into the truth. Where we start our conversation from has changed. We start our conversation over a heap of misinformation. So the meaning of truth has changed in the society. So this how much misinformation, firstly, quantifying is not possible. To answer your question, quantifying is not possible. What is said what in which corner, that is impossible to ascertain. But the larger point being that that the issue of misinformation quantification, what we need is an acknowledgement of the issue, that the issue exists. What, and the issue is enormous. Now, what is the exact amount of the enormity? I don't think that makes that much of a difference.
Say in case of Bengal, what would you say would be or was the most, the most, maybe most commonly spread misinformation, or what have you seen? What have you seen about the Bengal campaign which stood out in terms of misinformation?
Nothing in particular, but it is the usual thing which keeps going on, where you take one video from another place. Yeah, this time there's been some AI deepfake also, in addition to what was there in the 2021 election. The 2021 election, if you remember, when the results came out on May 2nd, and after that there was a lot of post-election violence, but there was also an enormous surge of misinformation, where it was being portrayed that there's a Hindu genocide that is happening in West Bengal. And at Rot News, we have repeatedly seen that West Bengal is one of the most targeted states. And when I say most targeted, what we do is we do a year-end analysis. We do put out year-end stories that which state about which state has there been most amount of misinformation, and West Bengal has often been on the top. So what I can say is that West Bengal and the politics of West Bengal is in an organized way targeted by misinformation to create narratives, and in a huge manner. And that continues for this election. That continues, the SIR process and everything. It is an ongoing thing where the information system is being actively used to create narratives.
You just spoke about AI and deepfake. Say a layman, someone like me, how do I actually? Some videos, yes, I can easily understand. Yeah, this is AI, but there are many fake in case of deepfake. It becomes very difficult. So how does common person, a layman, understand that this video is not a real, which it's deepfake?
Firstly, just from a technical standpoint, AI is related to deepfake. They are not
Right.
two
Not two separate entities.
not two separate entities. There can be different amount of manipulation in a video. A video could be completely generated from scratch. Existing video could be morphed using AI, and morphing used to happen in the past also, even before AI arrived. And all these video suits, etc., they are perfectly capable of morphing a video to portray something that it originally was not. Uh, but coming to your question, that what does a layman do? And this question has been put again and again to me. What does a layman do? If you, from a standard point of view, how can a layman see whether this is AI generated or not? They cannot. It is to put that burden on an individual is unfair, because they have not been enabled to take that burden. If you ask a farmer that what should I do, when should I put the seeds, when should I put the fertilizer, when should I put the pesticide, and if they are not able to answer that question, then one can say, oh, this is a good farmer, this is not so much of a good farmer, because they have been enabled to do that thing, that they know how to farm. And then you can ask them, what do you do? What do you do when there is a pest attack? But when you have not enabled the whole population and then ask what a layman can do, the layman can't do anything, because they have not been told what is the pesticide in this case, what is the fertilizer, what are good seeds, what are bad seeds. There, no such information exists. So a layman has to be first enabled by the system, and then one can expect something from them.
So this manipulation, this spread of misinformation, is it restricted to any one political party, or is it all across?
Misinformation is a global problem. It is a global problem in every sphere, whether it is political misinformation, medical misinformation, misinformation generated by corporates to sell their products, to oversell their products. During COVID, I even saw a oil manufacturer said, putting out that have this oil, it'll help you with COVID, right? So misinformation is a global phenomenon in every aspect. The aspect that alt news especially works with is misinformation about politics and society, which affects our lives, and some amount of medical misinformation. That is where we typically operate in. And in that, without a shadow of doubt, I can say that handles and associated with BJP put out a lot more misinformation than other parties. And they also have enormous amounts of money. And misinformation, we very often talk about the IT cell. That there's a IT cell, which what we forget is that there are actually big corporations which have been hired, and they create content, they create propaganda. So the IT cell is not just limited to some few people sitting inside a room. No, this is a industry which creates propaganda and content. And again, I'll say that it is not limited to one party. It is it this the the process of wresting control of, or rather, who will wrest control of the information space and who can set narratives, what narratives are set, is happening at an industrial scale. And the layman, as you said, are the victims. They have no say in this particular process, because the people, the mediums, which is Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, WhatsApp, they are also big monopoly companies, and their interest every year and year after year is the profit margin. They don't care what is happening to the society. We have seen a neighboring country, Myanmar, go through the worst, go through an exodus, purely because Facebook failed and refused to act on misinformation that was being put out by the Myanmar government, the Junta government, and was it the Junta government there, and the army there.
What is the way forward for how do we sift through this maze of information that is being constantly
And this
forced
is
down on us?
and this is where the layman's thing has to come in picture, that we have to start demanding, just the way we demand clean air. When Delhi is, for example, choking, and Calcutta also has a air issue. There are certain parts when you travel, you're almost choking, and we demand clean air. And there is, because it is happening physically to us, where we can smell this polluted
We
air.
don't get it.
We don't get it, but we demand. At least that first step is necessary. For example, in Delhi, the government had to put oil tankers at the pollution meters, right? They at least had to do something, because it is such a palpable issue, that you are choking, and the government is trying to say that, oh, it is not that bad an issue. We are going to put water tankers on the pollution meters. But it is a step forward than no one demanding. In this case, that is where we have to put out the demand, that we want an information space which is more clean. Just the way we demand for better roads, we demand for better water, we demand for better air. We have to demand. When a road is broken, there are many people who say that, khadda hai, log mar raha hai. But that same demand at this point of time is not coming out from the society, is not coming out from parents. So, for example, Europe and Australia and Canada and US, they are legislating laws whether children under 16 should be allowed on social media or not.
Karnataka has done it.
I don't think anything is passed.
They have proposed it.
No. But whether children under 16 should be on social media now. Now, that position we can debate on whether it is an okay position to take. But at least they are at a space where they are thinking about these issues. They have acknowledged the issue that children under 16-year-old are being harmed by social media.
But is this it is the government, it is a political party which is spreading the information and they are reaping the electoral benefits of it.
Yes.
It's not in their interest to stop the spread of
But that can be said about any country in the world.
Let's just stick to India.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that what the layman, the solution going forward is that we have to demand, we have to say that this is an issue and we want a solution for that. And that is not coming, that is only coming from some small close quarters. It is not a widespread demand. And I think that is again, the demand will come, for example, even during the whole Anna movement. How did corruption became an issue? Because the media actively spoke about corruption, right? The media actively said that there's a lot of corruption, and that is when corruption became an issue. So something has to be made an issue. Today, the media doesn't talk about misinformation as an issue. The media, you still have a huge astrology column, but you don't have a column about what misinformation is there this week. Not even once a week is there any attempt to create awareness. Schools are not indulging in it. Schools are not talking about it, or talking about it in very, very limited ways. So unless there is an effort to actually make it an issue, then one can talk about, what do we do with an issue? But at this point of time, as a society, as a country, our responsibility going forward is to make this an issue, that this is an issue and we want a solution for that. What is the solution? We don't know. What is the solution? Is a long trajectory, and many countries are struggling with it. There are multiple laws which are called censorship. Germany has a law, Singapore has a law. Many countries have made certain laws, and which are also leading to censorship, leading to drowning of critical voices and all of that. But at least let's get to that point from where on we can look for a solution.
India too is bringing about a law which is now going for YouTubers and others.
Yeah, but that is not about misinformation. It is not about misinformation. It is
on information.
It is on information and controlling who can say what. And the recent spurt in the last 2-3 months, where we have seen widespread censorship, where very, very simple posts have been taken down. So India is definitely not going, at least the government and the center is definitely not going towards dealing with the issue of misinformation. They are going very hard to control information and who says what.
SR has been a big issue this time in Bengal. We haven't seen anything like this. What kind of misinformation has been spread around SR? If you could give us a few examples.
Even before we go into the issue of misinformation, the issue is lack of information in SIR. So, for example, Alt News did a detailed story where Alt News, with help of certain friends, we actually digitized data of Malda and Murshidabad. And we showed how most of the people who have been educated, disproportionate number of people were from the Muslim community. I'm sure there are other constituencies where the story is different, but what we found during the process was it is so difficult to access information. If anyone wants to even report on the issue, the Election Commission has made sure that it is almost nearly impossible to report on the issue. So the first problem with SIR is the lack of information. What lack of information does is that it enables people to create any kind of information. If you don't have anything you can compare against, you can verify against, then you can create any kind of narrative you want. And that is where, and this has been done in the past. Even, for example, when CNRC was happening, if you go out and ask people did not know, and the narrative that the media was putting out, that is what we were talking about. And it has happened again and again in case of different laws, whether it was the Nirbhaya law, whether it was what happened to this whole anti-corruption law. Again, I'll come back to that there was such a huge thing that bring about the Lokpal law. What has happened? So to create a hua, it is very easy to use media and create that, and that gets sustained, especially if you ensure that accessibility of information which could possibly counter that narrative is not even there. So that is, I think, the biggest issue with SIR and the biggest disservice that Election Commission has done, that it has actively indulged in ensuring that information which is the most critical to the functioning of a democracy is inaccessible.
As you said, the BJP largely, it's one of the major players, if I say, players in spreading misinformation. And it has unlimited resources, being in power in the center and so many other states, etc. What can, say, a regional party like the Trinamool Congress or even the TMK too? Because those are directly affecting not just their politics, but also their governance in the state. So what can these parties do actually to counter this
Widespread
misinformation?
awareness campaigns across the state of all kinds, from radio to TV to schools, and at different ways, and not to counter something politically, but to counter the issue that there is an issue of misinformation, and that it is affecting people's lives. This is not to counter BJP, but that there is an issue of misinformation, and these are the ways of being critical towards the information you receive. These are the simple ways of thinking about the information you receive. What is the difference between fact and opinion? Something very, very basic. We are surrounded by opinion, but the opinion emanates from a certain fact, and opinion is not fact. This, because I've gone to schools and spoken to children, and this is the first chapter I start with. That is, what is fact, what is opinion. This is a piece of text I'm giving you. You tell me what is fact and what is opinion, because there's so much information that it sort of, it overwhelms people. Now you're seeing a 30-minute show by a news anchor who's speaking loudly, who's doing all kinds of theatrics. Absolutely. Right? But if you break it down, that what are the theatrics are the major part, but what is the fact that they are talking about? And then you can introduce the concept of fact check, that you have broken down the 30 minutes into a 1 minute. That 1 minute is the factual content of this 30-minute कार्यक्रम, and let's fact check that. And that is where we can introduce the concept of fact check, that if you have identified what is the fact in this volume of information, and then you can verify the fact, and that is where fact checking comes into picture. So, and this is very simple, very basic, and this is the kind of campaign that has to be done across schools, across institutions, everywhere. And then have billboards, have public communication, that don't, there's a lot of misinformation, don't believe anything. Put the doubt into people's mind. That is the first step.
Yeah. Schools have approached you for talking to students.
Yeah, but alt news is slightly, people don't want to work with alt news, but because I can understand why they don't want to work with alt news. But yeah, we have worked with schools, we have worked with many civil society organizations. We have gone and trained in many civil society organizations. We would love to work more with schools, but I can see why they are circumspect in wanting to work with alt news.
I think we used to once talk about the age of information that we are living in. So is it now the age of misinformation that we are living in?
No, it's still very much an age of information. I don't think we should. It is. It is still very much an age of information, but information is not as enabling as it was. Information has becoming more disabling in nature.
Thank you very much, Pratik, for talking to the Telegraph Online.
Thanks.
It was a pleasure to have you there.
Same here. Thanks.